Welcome, weary soul, to a sacred space of rest and peace. As the day draws to its close and your body yearns for sleep, you're not alone in the darkness. Tonight you are surrounded by a communion of saints who understand your need for rest, your longing for peace. For centuries, these holy men and women have walked the path of faith before us. They have known sleepless nights filled with worry, physical pain that disturbed their rest, and anxious thoughts that chased away peace. As you listen to their stories tonight, let your breathing slow and deepen. Allow your body to sink into comfort, your mind to release the day's concerns, and your heart to open to the gentle presence of these holy companions. Close your eyes now, dear soul. Sleep well. You are loved. You are protected. You are not alone. Let's begin. St. Joseph of Nazareth, 1st century. Demographics. Born in Bethlehem, died circa 20 AD in Nazareth. A humble carpenter and craftsman of the house of David. St. Joseph, often invoked as Sleeping Saint Joseph, stands as the premier patron saint of peaceful rest and divine dreams. His quiet, contemplative nature made him the perfect vessel for God's messages during sleep. In the Gospel of Matthew, we witness Joseph receiving 4 crucial divine communications through dreams. The angel's instruction to take Mary as his wife despite her mysterious pregnancy, the urgent warning to flee to Egypt with the Holy Family, the all clear to return from exile, and guidance to settle in Nazareth. Joseph's immediate obedience to these nocturnal revelations demonstrates the profound spiritual significance of sleep as a time of divine communication. His carpenter's hands, accustomed to creating beauty from raw materials, parallel how God shapes our souls during rest. Joseph's protection of the Holy Family makes him a powerful intercessor for peaceful sleep, protection from nightmares, and receiving divine guidance through dreams. His humble acceptance of God's plan, even when it came through the vulnerability of sleep, teaches us to trust in divine providence during our most defenseless hours. Modern devotees place images of sleeping saint, Joseph under their pillows or beside their beds, seeking his intercession for restful nights and peaceful dreams. St. Dymphna of Belgium, 7th century. Demographics. Born circa 620 AD in Ireland to a pagan king and Christian mother, martyred around 650 AD in Belgium. A young princess who fled her homeland to preserve her purity. St. Dymphna emerges as the compassionate patron of mental health struggles that disrupt sleep, including anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Her tragic story begins with the death of her beloved Christian mother, after which her father, suffering from severe mental illness, developed an unhealthy obsession with his daughter. Fleeing to Belgium with her confessor and 2 companions, Dymphna sought refuge in the forest near what is now Geel. When her deranged father pursued and found them, he murdered both Dymphna and her priest when she refused his advances. The 15-year-old princess's courage in the face of mental illness and violence made her a powerful advocate for those whose minds prevent peaceful rest. Her intercession is particularly sought by those who experience racing thoughts, worry-induced insomnia, night terrors stemming from trauma, and the sleep disturbances that accompany mental health conditions. The town of Geel, where she died, became renowned for its compassionate treatment of the mentally ill, hosting Europe's first therapeutic community. St. Dymphna's martyrdom transforms suffering into sanctification, offering hope to those whose troubled minds rob them of rest. Her feast day reminds us that even in our darkest nights of the soul, divine love persists. Saint Michael the Archangel, Heavenly Realm. Demographics. one of the three archangels named in Scripture, Prince of the heavenly host, God's warrior against evil forces. St. Michael the Archangel serves as the mighty protector against nightmares, evil dreams and spiritual disturbances during sleep. His name means, "who is like God," and his powerful presence serves as a shield against all forms of darkness that might intrude upon our rest. Traditional iconography depicts Michael with sword and scales, weighing souls and battling Satan, making him the perfect guardian for vulnerable sleeping hours. Many Catholics pray the St. Michael prayer before sleep, invoking his protection against evil influences in dreams and throughout the night. His warrior nature doesn't diminish his gentleness toward those seeking peaceful rest. Rather, his strength provides the security needed for truly restorative sleep. Michael's role in Scripture as God's messenger and protector extends naturally to guarding our subconscious minds during dreams, ensuring that divine messages can reach us while filtering out deceptive or frightening imagery. Sleep becomes a battleground where Michael wages war against forces that would disturb our peace, whether they manifest as nightmares, sleep paralysis, or spiritual oppression. Parents often teach children to call upon St. Michael when afraid at bedtime, knowing that this mighty archangel stands ready to defend the innocent. His intercession transforms the bedroom into a sanctuary where God's peace reigns supreme throughout the darkest hours. Saint Blaise of Sebaste, 3rd–4th century. Demographics. Born in Armenia, lived 316 to 387 AD. Physician turned bishop who ministered during the Diocletian persecution. Saint Blaise uniquely combines healing ministry with spiritual protection, making him an invaluable intercessor for those whose sleep is disrupted by physical ailments, particularly throat and respiratory conditions. Before his episcopal consecration, Blaise practiced medicine, developing deep compassion for human suffering and intimate knowledge of how physical discomfort destroys restful sleep. His most famous patronage covers throat ailments, but this extends logically to sleep apnea, snoring, and breathing difficulties that prevent deep rest. Historical accounts describe Blaise retreating to a cave for prayer and contemplation, where wild animals would come to him for healing blessings. This hermit-like period demonstrates his understanding of solitude's restorative power and the importance of quiet spaces for spiritual renewal. During the Diocletian persecution, soldiers found Blaise in his cave dwelling, where his peaceful demeanour despite impending martyrdom revealed his profound inner calm. His torture included having his flesh torn with iron combs, yet witnesses reported that he maintained an almost supernatural tranquility throughout his suffering. This peaceful endurance of physical pain makes him particularly effective for interceding on behalf of those whose sleep is troubled by chronic illness, pain, or respiratory distress. Modern devotees seek Saint Blaise's blessing not only for throat health, but for any physical condition that interferes with restful sleep, trusting in his unique combination of medical knowledge and spiritual authority. St. Peter Damian, 1007 to 1072 AD. Demographics. Born in Ravenna, Italy, to an impoverished family. Benedictine monk, cardinal, and doctor of the Church who struggled with insomnia throughout his life. St. Peter Damian holds the unique distinction of being the patron saint specifically for insomniacs and those suffering from sleep disorders, born from his own lifelong struggle with sleeplessness. Orphaned young and raised by an abusive brother, Peter's early trauma contributed to the sleep difficulties that would plague him throughout his scholarly and ecclesiastical career. Despite his insomnia, or perhaps because of it, Peter developed an extraordinarily rich prayer life, using his wakeful hours for contemplation, study, and spiritual writing. His personal experience with sleep deprivation gave him profound empathy for others suffering similarly, and his prayers became particularly powerful for those enduring restless nights. As a Benedictine monk, Peter struggled to maintain the community's sleep schedule, often lying awake during prescribed rest periods. This led him to develop special nighttime prayers and meditation techniques that could be practiced during sleepless hours, transforming potential frustration into spiritual growth. His extensive writings on prayer and contemplation were often composed during nighttime vigils born of necessity rather than choice. Peter's elevation to cardinal and eventual canonization, despite his sleep struggles, offers hope to modern insomniacs that their condition need not prevent them from achieving holiness or fulfilling their divine calling. His intercession is particularly sought by students, scholars, and anyone whose work demands mental acuity that is compromised by poor sleep. St. Peter Damian teaches us that even our sleep disorders can become pathways to deeper intimacy with God. St. Anthony of Padua, 1195 to 1231 AD. Demographics: born Fernando Martins de Bulhões in Lisbon, Portugal. Franciscan friar, Doctor of the Church, renowned preacher and finder of lost things. St. Anthony of Padua, while famous for finding lost objects, also serves as a gentle intercessor for those seeking to find lost peace and rest. His Portuguese birth name, Fernando, was changed to Anthony when he joined the Franciscans, symbolizing his complete transformation and surrender to God's will. This total abandonment to divine providence creates the perfect mindset for peaceful sleep, releasing control and trusting in God's protection through the night. Anthony's powerful preaching often moved audiences to tears and conversion, but his personal demeanour was remarkably gentle and contemplative. Historical accounts describe his custom of spending long hours in quiet prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, developing the deep interior peace that radiated from his entire being. This interior tranquility, cultivated through contemplative prayer, makes him an excellent patron for those seeking to quiet anxious minds at bedtime. His famous association with finding lost things extends spiritually to helping people rediscover lost peace, lost trust in God, and lost ability to rest peacefully. Many devotees report that praying to St. Anthony before sleep helps them find the elusive rest that stress and worry have stolen from them. His Franciscan spirituality, rooted in simplicity and trust in divine providence, offers a perfect model for approaching sleep, letting go of the day's concerns and resting in God's loving care. St. Anthony's intercession is particularly powerful for those who have lost loved ones and struggle with grief-induced insomnia, as he helps them find comfort in the promise of eternal reunion. St. Teresa of Ávila, 1515 to 1582 AD. Demographics: born Teresa Sánchez de Cepeda y Ahumada in Ávila, Spain. Carmelita nun, mystic, doctor of the Church, and reformer of religious life. St. Teresa of Avila revolutionized Christian understanding of contemplative prayer and mystical experience, making her an invaluable guide for those seeking deeper rest in God. Her masterwork, The Interior Castle, maps the soul's journey through 7 mansions of prayer, each representing deeper levels of spiritual intimacy and peace. Teresa's own mystical experiences often occurred during states of profound spiritual rest, where ordinary consciousness gave way to divine union. Her famous statement that God will bless you whether you are asleep or awake as long as you are faithful offers tremendous comfort to those struggling with sleep difficulties. As a reformer who established the Discalced Carmelites, Teresa understood the crucial importance of balanced rest for spiritual development. Her convents maintained strict schedules that honoured both prayer and adequate sleep, recognising that exhaustion hinders rather than helps spiritual growth. Teresa's mystical experiences included ecstasies, visions, and interior locutions that often occurred during quiet contemplative moments, teaching us that God frequently speaks in whispers that can only be heard in stillness. Her practical approach to spirituality included wise counsel about preparing for prayer through proper rest and approaching sleep as a form of abandonment to God's will. Modern contemplatives find in Teresa a guide who bridges the gap between extraordinary mystical experience and ordinary daily life, including the simple act of peaceful sleep. Her intercession is particularly powerful for those called to deeper prayer life, but hindered by restless minds that won't quiet themselves for either sleep or contemplation. St. John of the Cross, 1542 to 1591 AD. Demographics. Born Juan de Yepes Alvarez in Fontiveros, Spain. Carmelite friar, mystic, poet, and doctor of the Church who endured imprisonment and torture. St. John of the Cross, co-reformer with Teresa of Avila, and author of The Dark Night of the Soul, offers profound wisdom for those experiencing spiritual dryness or depression that affects their sleep. His concept of the dark night describes periods when God seems absent and prayer feels impossible, experiences that often manifest as spiritual insomnia or disturbed rest. John's own imprisonment in a 6x10-foot cell for 9 months, where he was beaten regularly and given minimal food, taught him how to find God's presence even in the darkest circumstances. During this brutal confinement, he composed some of his most beautiful mystical poetry, demonstrating how suffering can be transformed into intimacy with the divine. His understanding of passive contemplation, the prayer of simply being present to God without words or images, provides a perfect model for falling asleep in God's presence. John teaches that sometimes God calls souls into a state of spiritual receptivity that mirrors the vulnerability of sleep, where we must simply trust and surrender control. His poetry uses the imagery of the beloved seeking rest in the arms of God, creating beautiful parallels between human sleep and spiritual surrender. For those experiencing depression, spiritual dryness, or the feeling that God has abandoned them, St. John offers the hope that these dark nights are actually movements toward deeper union with the divine. His intercession is particularly powerful for those whose spiritual struggles manifest as sleep disturbances, racing thoughts, or the inability to find peace in prayer or rest. John transforms suffering into a pathway to the deepest intimacy with God. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, 1873 to 1897 AD. Demographics. Born Marie-Françoise Thérèse Martin in Alençon, France. Carmelite nun who developed the little way of spiritual childhood, died of tuberculosis at age 24. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, the little flower, teaches the profound simplicity of approaching God like a trusting child, an attitude that naturally leads to peaceful rest. Her revolutionary little way of spiritual childhood emphasizes complete trust in God's love and mercy, eliminating the anxiety and self-scrutiny that often prevent peaceful sleep. Thérèse understood that trying too hard to be holy could actually distance us from God, just as trying too hard to fall asleep often keeps us awake. Her approach to prayer was remarkably simple and trust-filled, often falling asleep during formal prayer times without guilt or self-condemnation. She viewed these moments not as failures but as expressions of childlike trust, saying that parents love their children even when they sleep in their arms. This attitude offers profound comfort to those who struggle with scrupulosity or perfectionism that interferes with rest. Therese's battle with tuberculosis taught her to offer even physical suffering as a gift to God, transforming illness-related sleep disturbances into opportunities for union with Christ's passion. Her promise to spend my heaven doing good on earth makes her particularly accessible to modern devotees seeking her intercession for peaceful nights. Despite her young age at death, Therese's spiritual maturity and trust in divine love offer a perfect model for approaching both sleep and death with serene confidence. Her intercession is especially powerful for those whose perfectionist tendencies or religious scrupulosity prevent them from experiencing the restful peace that God desires for his children. Saint Faustina Kowalska, 1905 to 1938 AD. Demographics. Born Helena Kowalska in Głogowiec, Poland. Sister of the Congregation of the Divine Mercy, who received visions of Jesus and promoted the Divine Mercy devotion. Saint Faustina received her most profound mystical experiences during quiet hours of prayer and rest, making her a powerful intercessor for those seeking divine encounters during sleep or meditation. Her diary records numerous visions, interior locutions, and mystical experiences that often occurred during nighttime hours or periods of contemplative rest. Jesus appeared to her frequently during these quiet moments, teaching her the Divine Mercy Chaplet and prayers that would spread throughout the world. Faustina's ability to receive divine communication during restful states demonstrates how God often speaks to souls when they're most receptive and least distracted by worldly concerns. Her visions of heaven, hell, and purgatory occurred during mystical states that resembled deep spiritual rest, where ordinary consciousness yielded to supernatural awareness. The Divine Mercy image that Jesus revealed to her came through a vision received during prayer, showing how divine inspiration often flows during moments of quiet receptivity. Faustina's practice of offering small sacrifices and sufferings throughout each day created an interior disposition of trust and surrender that naturally led to peaceful rest. Her devotion to the 3 o'clock hour, commemorating Jesus' death, sanctifies afternoon rest periods and siestas as opportunities for spiritual union. Modern devotees find that praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet before sleep creates an atmosphere of trust and mercy that promotes peaceful rest. St. Faustina's intercession is particularly powerful for those seeking mystical experiences, divine guidance through dreams, or simply the deep peace that comes from trusting completely in God's infinite mercy. St. Hildegard of Bingen, 1098 to 1179 AD. Demographics. Born in Bermersheim, Germany. Benedictine abbess, mystic, composer, philosopher, physician, and polymath, declared Doctor of the Church. St. Hildegard of Bingen uniquely combines mystical vision with practical knowledge of natural healing, making her an excellent intercessor for those seeking both spiritual and physical restoration through proper rest. Her extraordinary visions, which she called living light, began in childhood and continued throughout her long life, often occurring during states of contemplative quiet that bordered on mystical sleep. Unlike many mystics who experienced visions during ecstatic states, Hildegard insisted that her revelations came while she was fully awake and alert, though in a state of profound spiritual receptivity that modern practitioners might recognize as deep meditation. Her medical writings demonstrate sophisticated understanding of sleep's importance for physical and spiritual health, prescribing specific herbs, dietary changes, and lifestyle modifications to promote restful sleep. Hildegard viewed the human person as a unity of body, soul, and spirit, understanding that disturbances in one area inevitably affected the others, making holistic approaches to sleep disorders particularly important. Her compositions, including hymns and antiphons, were designed to lift the soul toward divine contemplation, creating perfect soundtrack for pre-sleep prayer and meditation. As an abbess, Hildegard balanced the contemplative life with active engagement in worldly affairs, modelling how proper rest enables rather than hinders productive activity. Her extensive correspondence with popes, emperors, and other leaders demonstrates that mystical experience enhances rather than replaces practical wisdom. Modern devotees often use Hildegard's herbal remedies alongside prayer to her intercession, seeking her holistic approach to sleep difficulties. Saint Hildegard teaches us that visions and mystical experiences are not separate from ordinary life, but rather deepen our appreciation for God's presence in creation, including the daily miracle of restorative sleep. St. Benedict of Nursia, 480 to 547 AD. Demographics, born in Nursia, Italy, hermit who became the founder of Western monasticism and wrote the rule that governs monastic life. St. Benedict of Nursia, patriarch of Western monasticism, created the foundational structure for communal religious life that honours the sacred rhythm of prayer, work, and rest. His holy rule demonstrates profound wisdom about human nature's need for balanced living, including adequate sleep for physical health and spiritual growth. Benedict's famous motto, Ora et labora, pray and work, implicitly includes rest as the third pillar supporting authentic spiritual life, recognizing that exhausted people cannot pray or work effectively. The monastic horarium, daily schedule that Benedict established, includes specific times for sleep, treating rest not as laziness, but as necessary preparation for encountering God in prayer and service. His rule prescribes that monks should sleep clothed and ready, symbolizing constant readiness to respond to God's call while maintaining the vulnerability that sleep requires. Benedict's understanding of community life included practical provisions for those who struggled with sleep disorders, allowing flexibility within structure and recognizing individual differences in sleep needs. His emphasis on stability, conversion, and obedience creates interior conditions that naturally promote peaceful rest. Stability eliminates anxious searching, conversion releases guilt and regret, and obedience surrenders control to divine providence. The Benedictine tradition of Compline, the final prayer of the day, creates perfect spiritual preparation for sleep, acknowledging the day's failings while expressing trust in God's protection through the night. Modern Benedictine communities continue to demonstrate how rhythmic living that honors rest as sacred can create sustainable spiritual practices. St. Benedict's intercession is particularly powerful for those struggling to establish healthy sleep routines, those whose work schedules conflict with natural rest patterns, and anyone seeking to integrate prayer and rest in daily life. St. Catherine of Siena, 1347 to 1380 AD. Demographics. Born Caterina di Giacomo di Benincasa in Siena, Italy, Dominican tertiary, mystic, and doctor of the Church who influenced papal politics, St. Catherine of Siena experienced her most profound mystical encounters during states of contemplative absorption that often resembled supernatural sleep, making her a powerful advocate for those seeking divine union through restful prayer. Her first vision of Jesus occurred at age 7, establishing a pattern of divine communication that would continue throughout her life, often during quiet moments of prayer and contemplation. Catherine's mystical experiences included extended periods of ecstatic union with God that witnesses described as trance-like states, where she appeared to be sleeping while remaining spiritually alert to divine communication. Her famous mystical marriage to Christ occurred during one of these profound contemplative states, demonstrating how God often communicates most intimately when the soul is completely receptive and at rest. Despite her intense active ministry, writing letters to popes, travelling throughout Italy to promote church reform, Catherine maintained a deep interior life rooted in contemplative prayer that required periods of complete rest from worldly engagement. Her ability to combine extraordinary mystical experience with practical political engagement shows how proper spiritual rest energizes rather than diminishes active service. Catherine's writings reveal sophisticated understanding of how the soul must sometimes rest completely in God's presence, releasing all effort and simply receiving divine love like a sleeping child in its parents' arms. Her severe ascetical practices, including minimal sleep, were eventually moderated as she learned that excessive mortification could actually hinder rather than help spiritual progress. Modern contemplatives find in Catherine a model of how to balance intense spiritual experiences with the ordinary human need for rest and restoration. Saint Catherine's intercession is particularly powerful for those called to both contemplative prayer and active service, helping them find the proper balance between divine union and worldly engagement. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, 1647 to 1690 AD. Demographics. Born in Lautecourt, France. Visitation nun who received visions of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and promoted this devotion throughout the Catholic world. St. Margaret Mary Alacoque received her transformative visions of the Sacred Heart during periods of quiet adoration before the Blessed Sacrament, demonstrating how God often reveals himself during restful contemplative states. Her most significant mystical experiences occurred while she was in prayer postures that promoted interior stillness and receptivity, often during nighttime hours when distractions were minimal. The devotion to the Sacred Heart that Jesus revealed to her includes specific promises for those who honor his heart through prayer and reparation, including the grace of final perseverance and peaceful death. Margaret Mary's visions emphasize Jesus' infinite love and mercy, creating perfect preparation for trustful sleep, knowing that we rest each night in the embrace of God's Sacred Heart. Her promotion of the First Friday devotions sanctifies the rhythm of work and rest, encouraging monthly periods of special prayer and contemplation that restore spiritual equilibrium. The image of Jesus' Sacred Heart that she described radiates warmth, comfort and protection, perfect symbols for bedside prayer and nighttime meditation. Margaret Mary's own struggles with illness and pain taught her to unite her sufferings with those of Jesus, transforming sleepless nights caused by physical discomfort into opportunities for spiritual communion. Her emphasis on reparation for sins against God's love helps heal the guilt and regret that often prevent peaceful sleep, replacing self-condemnation with confidence in divine mercy. The Sacred Heart devotion that she promoted includes prayers specifically designed for morning and evening, creating perfect bookends for daily rest periods. Modern devotees often place images of the Sacred Heart in their bedrooms, seeking the protection and comfort that Jesus promised to those who honor his heart. Saint Margaret Mary's intercession is particularly powerful for those seeking to deepen their trust in God's love. those struggling with guilt that prevents peaceful rest, and anyone desiring more intimate communion with Jesus through contemplative prayer. Saint Bernadette Soubirous, 1844 to 1879 AD. Demographics. Born in Lourdes, France, to an impoverished miller's family. Visionary who received 18 apparitions of the Virgin Mary and later became a nun. Saint Bernadette Soubirous teaches us about the profound peace that comes from complete surrender to God's will, even when that will manifest through extraordinary experiences that disrupt ordinary life patterns. Her 18 visions of Our Lady at Lourdes occurred during states of mystical absorption, where she appeared to be in a different realm entirely, her face radiating supernatural peace and joy that attracted thousands of observers. Witnesses reported that during the apparitions, Bernadette seemed unaware of her surroundings, completely focused on the beautiful lady who spoke with her, demonstrating the kind of single-hearted attention that perfect prayer requires. The messages that Our Lady gave to Bernadette emphasized prayer, penance, and conversion, spiritual practices that naturally promote the interior peace necessary for restful sleep. Bernadette's humble acceptance of both the extraordinary graces of the visions and the subsequent trials of fame and scrutiny models the spiritual maturity needed to maintain equanimity, whether experiencing consolation or desolation. Her later religious life as a sister of charity demonstrated how mystical experiences must be integrated into ordinary religious practice, including the communal rhythms of prayer, work, and rest that characterize authentic spiritual living. Despite suffering from painful illness throughout her religious life, Bernadette maintained the same peaceful surrender she had shown during the apparitions, transforming physical discomfort into spiritual offering. The spring that appeared at Lourdes during the apparitions symbolizes the refreshing grace that flows when souls surrender completely to God's will, creating interior conditions that promote both physical and spiritual restoration. Modern pilgrims to Lourdes often report profound peace and healing, including the resolution of sleep disorders and anxiety conditions that had resisted other treatments. Saint Bernadette's intercession is particularly powerful for those struggling to accept difficult circumstances, those whose health problems interfere with rest, and anyone seeking the simple, trusting faith that allows perfect abandonment to divine providence. St. Juan Diego Cuauhtlahuatzin, 1474 to 1548 AD. Demographics. Born in Cuautitlan, Mexico, indigenous Aztec peasant who received visions of Our Lady of Guadalupe and became the first indigenous saint of the Americas. St. Juan Diego exemplifies the humble receptivity that allows ordinary people to receive extraordinary graces, including the mystical experiences that often occur during quiet, contemplative moments similar to peaceful sleep. His encounters with Our Lady of Guadalupe demonstrate how God chooses simple, trusting souls as instruments of divine communication, particularly those who maintain childlike openness to supernatural intervention. The apparitions occurred during Juan Diego's regular walks to church, times of transitional quiet between home and formal prayer, suggesting how God often speaks during liminal moments, when we are neither fully active nor completely at rest. Our Lady's request that Juan Diego gather roses in December and present them to the bishop required complete trust in seemingly impossible instructions, modelling the faith needed to surrender our nights to God's protection, despite circumstances that might suggest danger or uncertainty. The miraculous image of Our Lady that appeared on Juan Diego's tilma serves as a permanent reminder of how divine love manifests in material reality, making it perfect for bedside contemplation and pre-sleep prayer. Juan Diego's indigenous background brings rich cultural understanding of dreams and visions as normal aspects of spiritual life, contrasting with European skepticism toward mystical experiences and offering a more integrated approach to supernatural communication. His later life as a hermit near the shrine demonstrates how extraordinary mystical experiences often lead to deeper contemplative living, including more structured approaches to prayer, rest, and spiritual discipline. The devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe that grew from Juan Diego's visions emphasizes Mary's maternal protection of all her children, creating perfect conditions for trustful sleep under her care. Modern devotees often pray the Rosary or other Marian prayers before sleep, seeking the same protective presence that Our Lady promised to Juan Diego and all who honor her under this title. St. Juan Diego's intercession is particularly powerful for those from marginalized communities, those whose cultural background includes positive understanding of dreams and visions, and anyone seeking to maintain simple trust in divine protection despite difficult external circumstances. St. Bridget of Sweden, 1303 to 1373 AD. Demographics: born Birgitta, Birgersdotter in Uppland, Sweden. Noblewoman, mother of 8 children, mystic, and founder of the Brigittine order. St. Bridget of Sweden received over 700 divine revelations throughout her life, many occurring during contemplative states that resembled mystical sleep, where ordinary consciousness yielded to supernatural awareness. Her first vision at age 10 showed Christ crucified, establishing a lifelong relationship with Jesus that included intimate conversations about his passion, resurrection, and ongoing presence in the world. Bridget's mystical experiences often occurred during the quiet hours of early morning or late evening, times when household duties didn't demand her attention, and she could enter the deep prayer states that made divine communication possible. Her revelations included detailed visions of Christ's nativity and passion, providing rich material for contemplative meditation that can accompany preparation for sleep or early morning prayer. As mother of 8 children, Bridget understood the challenges of maintaining spiritual practices while caring for family responsibilities, developing flexible approaches to prayer that could accommodate varying sleep schedules and unexpected interruptions. Her eventual religious life after her husband's death demonstrated how mystical experiences can flourish within structured community living that honors appropriate times for prayer, work, and rest. The Brigittine order that she founded included both men and women living in adjacent monasteries, sharing church and chapter room while maintaining separate dormitories, showing her practical wisdom about creating appropriate conditions for contemplative life. Bridget's political involvement, including her role in encouraging the Pope's return from Avignon to Rome, demonstrates how mystical experience enhances rather than replaces practical engagement with worldly affairs. Her writings include specific prayers for different times of day, including beautiful evening prayers that prepare the soul for restful sleep in confidence of divine protection. Modern devotees often use St. Bridget's prayers as part of bedtime routines, finding that her intimate conversational approach to divine communication creates perfect preparation for trustful rest. St. Bridget's intercession is particularly powerful for parents struggling to maintain spiritual practices while caring for children, those seeking mystical experiences within busy lives, and anyone desiring more intimate conversation with Jesus through contemplative prayer. Saint Rita of Cascia, 1381 to 1457 AD. Demographics: born Margherita Lotti in Roccaporena, Italy. Wife, mother, widow, and Augustinian nun known as the patron saint of impossible cases. St. Rita of Cascia, beloved patron of impossible causes, offers hope to those facing seemingly insurmountable obstacles to peaceful rest, whether from chronic pain, family conflicts, or spiritual trials that appear beyond human resolution. Her life journey from wife and mother to religious demonstrates how God can transform even the most difficult circumstances into pathways toward deeper union with the divine. Rita's marriage to an abusive husband taught her to find interior peace despite external turmoil, developing spiritual practices that maintained serenity even when circumstances seemed designed to destroy tranquility. Her years of patient endurance and prayer for her husband's conversion show how persistent intercession can create interior conditions of trust and hope that naturally promote peaceful rest, even in difficult family situations. After her husband's murder and her son's deaths, Rita's entrance into religious life at age 36 required divine intervention to overcome the convent's initial rejection, demonstrating how God makes seemingly impossible vocations possible through persistence and prayer. Her mystical experiences included receiving a wound on her forehead from a thorn from Christ's crown, uniting her suffering with his passion, and creating a permanent reminder of divine love's willingness to share human pain. Rita's reputation for miraculous intercession grew from her own experience of receiving divine help in impossible situations, making her particularly effective for those whose sleep is disturbed by problems that seem beyond human solution. Her garden at the convent produced roses and figs out of season, symbolizing how divine power can bring unexpected beauty and nourishment, even in seemingly barren periods of life. The roses associated with Saint Rita have become symbols of hope and impossible grace, making rose petals or images perfect additions to bedside prayer spaces. Modern devotees facing impossible family situations, health crises, or spiritual trials often report profound comfort and unexpected solutions after persistent prayer to Saint Rita. Her intercession is particularly powerful for those whose sleep is disrupted by worry over impossible situations, family conflicts that seem beyond resolution, or chronic conditions that medical science cannot cure. St. Gemma Galgani, 1878 to 1903 AD. Demographics. Born in Borgo Nuovo di Camigliano, Italy, lay mystic who experienced stigmata, ecstasies, and numerous supernatural phenomena while living as a Passionist tertiary. St. Gemma Galgani experienced her most profound mystical graces during states of ecstatic contemplation that transcended ordinary consciousness, offering a model for how deep spiritual rest can become a gateway to divine union. Her weekly stigmata, appearing every Thursday evening and healing by Saturday morning, occurred during mystical states where she appeared unconscious to observers but remained vividly aware of spiritual realities. Witnesses reported that during these ecstasies Gemma's face radiated supernatural beauty and peace, her entire being transformed by intimate communion with Jesus, demonstrating how complete abandonment to God can produce extraordinary serenity. Her mystical experiences included frequent conversations with Jesus, Mary, and her guardian angel, showing how contemplative states can become opportunities for divine friendship that surpasses ordinary prayer. Gemma's ability to experience such profound mystical phenomena while living in an ordinary household, caring for children and performing domestic duties, demonstrates how extraordinary spiritual graces can flourish within normal daily rhythms that include appropriate rest. Her spiritual director noted that Gemma's ecstasies always left her more peaceful and humble, never producing spiritual pride or disruption of community life, showing how authentic mystical experience promotes, rather than disturbs, genuine spiritual equilibrium. the physical sufferings that accompanied her mystical graces, including demonic attacks, illness, and the painful stigmata, taught Gemma to unite all discomfort with Christ's passion, transforming even sleepless nights into opportunities for spiritual communion. Her simple, childlike approach to mystical experience, accepting extraordinary graces with the same trust she showed toward ordinary daily events, offers a perfect model for approaching both mystical prayer and peaceful sleep. Modern devotees often report that praying to St. Gemma before sleep creates an atmosphere of expectant faith that opens the soul to whatever graces God desires to bestow, whether extraordinary or ordinary. St. Gemma's intercession is particularly powerful for those seeking deeper mystical experience, those whose spiritual practices are disrupted by illness or family responsibilities, and anyone desiring the simple trust that allows complete abandonment to divine will. St. Thomas Aquinas, 1225 to 1274 AD. Demographics. Born in Roccasecca, Italy. Dominican friar, theologian, and doctor of the Church who synthesized Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology. St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, offers profound intellectual and spiritual guidance for understanding contemplative prayer as the highest form of human activity, naturally leading to the peace and rest that flow from divine union. His systematic theology demonstrates how human reason and divine revelation work together to create comprehensive understanding of spiritual realities, including the role of rest and contemplation in authentic spiritual development. Thomas's personal prayer life, including his custom of spending long hours before the Blessed Sacrament, shows how scholarly work must be grounded in contemplative intimacy with God to produce authentic spiritual wisdom. His famous mystical experience near the end of his life, after which he declared all his writings straw compared to what had been revealed to him, demonstrates how even the most sophisticated theological understanding must ultimately yield to direct divine encounter. The Summa Theologica includes detailed analysis of contemplative life as superior to active life, because it participates more directly in the divine nature, though Thomas emphasizes that the mixed life combining contemplation and action represents the highest Christian vocation. His understanding of how grace builds upon nature rather than destroying it provides perfect framework for approaching sleep as natural good that becomes supernatural grace when offered to God with proper intention. Thomas's doctrine of the unity of the human person, body and soul as single substance, prevents false separation between physical rest and spiritual practice, showing how proper sleep serves both bodily health and spiritual development. His prayers, including the beautiful prayers before and after Mass, demonstrate how theological precision can enhance rather than diminish personal devotion and intimate conversation with God. The academic schedule that Thomas maintained, balancing intensive study with communal prayer and adequate rest, offers a practical model for integrating intellectual work with spiritual practice and physical restoration. Modern students and scholars often seek St. Thomas's intercession for wisdom that comes not merely from study, but from contemplative understanding that integrates mind, heart, and spirit. St. Thomas's intercession is particularly powerful for those whose intellectual work interferes with prayer and rest, those seeking to understand contemplative practice more deeply, and anyone desiring the peace that comes from seeing all reality in relationship to God. Rest now in the peace of the saints. Sleep well, beloved soul.